In this video, I'm going to share with you a build that I created today to make it easier for me to just face enemies. It's kind of a blasphemous blade, but heavy, slower, but still you're going to heal, and you're going to deal lots of poise damage. You're going to have lots of poise yourself, and basically you can smash enemies, even the tougher ones out there. Those enemies that usually you reposition and, kind of, think twice before engaging them. Here, you don't need to even think. Just go in. For example, I remember this enemy when we even with the blasphemous blade, I needed to reposition and stuff. But with this one, I'm just staying there and hitting him without worrying too much. I told you, kind of blasphemous blade, but a heavy one. In this build, you're gonna have range, you're gonna have amazing melee capabilities, you'll be slowing enemies, stop them in place. Literally, they won't be able to fight you in some situations. With tons of CC, well, you have to see this in the build, there's lots of cool stuff to show you. And this one stands on its own right, but it's just yet another extra utility that I have. Sometimes I change, sometimes I die, so I need to change and balance things out so I can just stand in place, deal damage, get enemies down, and bye-bye. Even against some of the annoying enemies in the DLC. So before we jump into all the details, I want to talk about something very important, and this is poise. Keep in mind, if you think that I got something inaccurate or wrong, let me know in the comment section below. So one of the most important things is the poise. So you can see what is poise here. I basically created this table here so you can easily understand what I'm covering here. But basically poise is a character stat that determines the resistance to being staggered by enemy attacks. High poise allows you to endure more hits without your character flinching or being interrupted, which is particularly important in maintaining offense and defense during combat. So basically you want a high poise value. The other thing is that poise damage for the weapon, some certain weapons like great swords and hammers typically deal higher poise damage, making it easier to stagger opponents. You also have your poise health, and enemies have their own poise health, basically kind of an invisible bar that once depleted, again, if it's you, you're gonna get staggered. If it's the enemy will get staggered. There's also the hyper armor, will basically provide kind of a temporary high poise during an attack animation, and some weapons have higher hyper armor than others. The idea is that you can actually finish attacks if you're attacking slow. Otherwise, slow weapons would be just completely terrible because you can't really finish attacks if you can easily get interrupted. So the one I'm using here is the Greathorn Hammer. So yeah, what I'm using in the build, the Greathorn Hammer is not a DLC weapon, but it's absolutely amazing for the DLC. Because it's a great hammer, it attacks slow, but it has very good poise damage, and also hyper armor. By default, it's mainly scales in strength, but we're going to talk about this thing in a moment, how I change it to Faith. So before that, where you can get it? You can get it in Nocturne, again, not in the DLC, but in the original game. You go to Sea of a River, and if you go to Ancestral Woods, there are actually 2 enemies there. You can actually farm for it in order to get it. So once you get there, there's a singing NPC, and then below them, below this one, you're going to see 2 enemies. Both of them will actually be carrying this weapon. There's 2% from what I read on Extra Life if you have 100 discovery to actually get the weapon. But these are the enemies. Now, personally, I really love how this weapon looks like. I look a bit dangerous with the pointy thing. But that's not the main reason. The thing is that this weapon gives you 3% extra health when you kill an enemy. Now, we also have Ashe 4, which I'm going to show you in a minute which one, but basically you're going to see that it actually stacks. So basically, if you see me eliminating the enemy, you can see that I heal. On Extra Life, it says 30%, although it doesn't look to me 30% still. It's a big chunk. And also I have the 3% extra. So look at that. Did you see it? Let me show it to you again. You can see that one from the Ashe of War, the big chunk. And now a little bit. This is the 3%. So of course, it's a percentage, so it's benefit from high HP. Now again, this is not the entire build. I'm going to explain more in a moment. But basically, I'm also using the Serpent-God's Cursed Sword on the other hand. I also have, by the way, the seal, and the reason I use seal for incantations. And again, this is optional for me, but still I'm going to show you why it's actually a good option. Again, it's a bit taxing, of course, when it comes to weight to have the extra, but when fighting multiple enemies, it can be beneficial. Let me explain. So you can see here, I'll be using both weapons, and I'm going to test if they stack. So now you can see with the red, this is 2 weapons for the healing, all right? And I would fight with left hand, not using the Serpent-God's Cursed Sword at all. And you're going to see how much it actually heals. So you can see it's a significant difference. But again, I'm not using here the skill, just the kills. And of course, against bosses, it won't be good. This is why we need a good skill that heals us without needing to kill an enemy. So when we are hitting enemies, we're going to use the Prayerful Strike Ashe of War. This deals 36 tense damage. Again, this is based on Extra Life information. They say that it heals 30% of max HP per enemy hit. It doesn't look like it, but again, I'm just reading now from their page. And in page 1.07, it says that the power and poise damage have been increased. Now you can see it scales with B when I go to Sacred, and when you deal holy damage when we use this Ashe of War. Now when it comes to talismans, there are different ones that I consider, and I change a bit depending on the situation. It's a boss or just moving around here, the world. But basically I use Bolgo's talisman to raise Poise, Shadow of Alexander for damage, Godfrey icon for damage, and Beloved Stardust. Although I take extra damage, again I can heal, but this allows me to cast significantly faster. I mean, incantations. Speaking of incantations, I use these are the main ones that I must have in the build. Other ones I'm changed, again, depends on the situation. Now the thing is with them that I use them more on a defensive manner, or something that synergizes basically, because again, I'm a melee build. I use basically both of them as CC, crowd control. You're going to see, it's amazing. So first of all, worth from afar. Basically controlling the pace of the combat against those enemies mounted, rushing at me, all the different situations when I want to have an advantage of attacking first. So in most part, basically zoning and segmenting enemies. Multiple enemies where I want to attack one first and then the other. Now you can see that with the talisman, I actually can do it very fast. Without it, it's super slow. But now it's very reactive, and the build itself becomes very reactive as well. So again, this is something in between, because it takes me time, of course, to attack. If I see enemies rushing at me, I will activate it first, get this a little stagger, or even enemies just going to fall on the ground, and then I'm just going to attack. Multilayered Ring of Light is two purposes. First of all, range damage. And the most important thing, slowing down and zoning enemies. You just don't understand how OP this one is. It's absolutely crazy. Let me give you a better example so you can see what I'm talking about. Basically letting enemies get close to me, but very, very slowly. And of course you can optimize the build for higher damage incantation for this particular one. If you want to go more hybrid, up to you. Alright, let me show it to you again in slow motion so you can actually see what's happening. I actually can do it very, very fast, so I can actually spam it. Alright, so you can hit enemies, but look at that. Immediately can just, almost immediately, another one. Jumps, keep distance. And then again, come slow, and then I can hit them. Here, I'm actually taking my time, just enjoying, you know, taking my time, relaxing in between. You can't even get close to me. Another one. And then I go with an attack. It's just standing there, and then I decide, all right, let's go. And what makes both viable is the Beloved Stardust Talisman. And because of that, I don't actually use something to increase my defenses, although there are situations which I'll do that. Go in extra defenses instead of other utility. But many situations, because I have such great degree of control of the battlefield, actually enemies don't really get to hit me as much, and actually this give me extra to do other things by limiting enemies faster, better crowd control against multiple enemies. But again, depends on the situation. Sometimes I'll just push something in order to increase the defenses. And one good situation, of course, is against bosses. Of course, there are different options, but here are some options for you, talisman, that you can use that can benefit this type of build. And you can play with it, increasing damage, and it can depend on the situation or getting more defenses. It's all about, after all, keeping a balance between different scenarios that the game throws at you and try to make the best out of it, while still maintaining the core idea of the build. Alright, let me demonstrate. Alright, so in this area, there are going to be lots of enemies that can deal lots of physical damage. So basically, I'm putting here an extra defense. I tried to sneak on them before, it didn't work, but this time, take a look. Beautiful. Now I'm going to use range. This one is hiding. Here I'm going to use range again. Keep in mind, you can do insane damage with this. I'm telling you. If you optimize it for something even more hybrid, the damage will be crazy. Now, how OP this one is? Well, take a look. I'm going to show you against the knight that usually you don't want to just stand and do nothing. Here, with this one, I can do it. Crazy, huh? Yeah, and that happened. So as you can see, the core build itself is amazing. You have range, you're very, very powerful up close, you have great poise, you have the option to really control the battle, zone enemies, slow them down, push them out of cliffs or out of high elevation down to their death. Yes, very fast incantations, which are essential in this build. Otherwise, again, it just wouldn't work, wouldn't be that reactive, and it just wouldn't work. You can't really be slow when it comes to those incantations, because you really need to do it in time to react to when enemies rushing at you or doing something very fast. Basically, I can say that each of the things that I showed you can stand on its own, being very powerful. Some of them are more powerful than others, but overall, when you combine them together, you get a build that's absolutely devastating and doing crazy damage, great CC, both melee and range, all in one. If you have any suggestions for improvement, let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this one. More coming, so make sure to subscribe to my channel for other guides. I'm gonna see you in the next video. Cheers.